I'm Pat Johnson, and we lived here the years 82, 83, 84.
And I'm Bob Johnson. Same years here in Lama, early 80s. Yes.
For me, Lama was what in a monastery would be called a 3-year formation period. It formed me, and it was my major formation for the rest of my life, those 3 years.
We came to Lama on my impetus because I had been involved in a bicycle accident that could have killed me but didn't, and it made me look at what I had been doing that day and realized that I had brought that on myself and I needed help. And I knew about Lama, and so we moved here the following spring. The accident happened in October, I believe.
How might your life have been different if you hadn't have found Lama?
Wow.
Well, I think I would have still been searching for a path. And even though I had been introduced to meditation by a Buddhist, and that's still my practice is Zen, I would have still been looking for a way to incorporate that into my life. And I think Lama really helped me through what Pat said was formation. And shortly after we left here, I called my teacher, and he said, why are you where you are? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, that's why you're confused. You don't know what you're doing, or you don't know why you're doing it. So Lama helped me there.
And for me, I wouldn't have found my teacher nor my life's work, because the first summer that we were here, Thomas Keating walked up the mountain during the Ram Dass camp, and I didn't get to hear him speak the first time he spoke to the Lama staff because I was cooking for the Ram Dass camp. But this guy came running over to the kitchen and said, whatever you do, get a break tomorrow so you can hear this man, because he says he's a Catholic, but I think he's a Buddhist. And for you, having been out of the church for 19 years, you have got to hear what this man is saying, which led me, when we left Lama, to move up to near St. Benedict's Monastery and start a 34-year doing 10-day intensives every month at St. Benedict's Monastery. So it's been my life's work. It would have been a very different life.
What do you see as Lama's most vital contribution to the world?
I think what Zuleika said in that dance yesterday about feeding people across the table because your elbows wouldn't bend. I think that's Lama for me, is relation. Nothing happens outside of relationship. So we have to be very careful about how we act and respond and do with our fellow human beings.
And I think that the most vital thing that they consistently have done, we've had a 35-year history, but I'm sure it was happening for the 15 years previous. They've consistently allowed intimate relationships to happen by living in a place that is simple and connected. And again, this means it's all about relationship. And it's what everyone is searching for, is intimacy in relationships. And not a sexual intimacy, but a spiritual. You know, we're all one, we're not separate. And that's what Lama allows. I would envision that they'll just continue evolving, and that there's no limits on what this place will evolve to, because it's, as Ram Dass said, silence produces love. And so they're passing love out into the world. And when that's happening, it's a safe space for anything to happen. And our global planet is in such need of that right now. Absolutely. That without places like Lama and the people who've been formed at Lama, we wouldn't even have a planet to come back to.
Yeah, I think that Lama in the next 50 years, I was really gratified since we left here and we were on the board during the difficult times, that Lama has at last reached out for help from the surrounding community and people who knew what they were doing and could contribute to what Lama was headed for. So my hope for the next 50 years would be that Lama would continue its outreach into the community, to the greater community, and politically as well. So, I mean, the spiritual basis that we all try to attain is also a basis for political action, because we are in relationship with others, and our decisions are far-reaching as individuals, I think.
And because none of it's separate.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
For me, it would be 3 words: continue to continue.
I would say that for me, coming to Lama was like jumping into a pressure cooker, and that I hadn't experienced before. It was a new thing. So I carried a lot of baggage with me into that pressure cooker. A lot of baggage. So I would, my recommendation for the future Lama beings would be, dump your baggage at the bottom of the mountain if you can. If you can't, and you have to carry it with you, allow the people at Lama to help you drop it, wherever. And my first experience was, if I don't drop my crap outside the meeting, then I take it in with me, and everybody can see it if they're at all. Anyway, that's what I would say. Get rid of your crap.
Do you have any encounters with particular teachers that have been here that have a memorable story to it that you'd like to share, or some other anecdote of your time here?
Yeah, this is a funny story, because I was cooking for the Ram Dass camp, and it was my first experience with Ram Dass, and there was a couple hundred people here. So, and Bob and I would share going to tuning meeting in order for us to feed. One of us had to feed Sarah. So, on this particular day, I was in the AA feeding Sarah. Bob was at the tuning meeting, and at the tuning meeting, they decided, instead of having lunch here at Lama for 200 people, they were going down to Taos to visit the monkey. But I was a cook, and so I come up not knowing that, and I'm getting ready to cook, and someone comes in. It was Lynn, came in and said, well, we're not having lunch here. You have to put together a picnic, and it's got to be ready at 10 o'clock. And of course, my Irish just hit the ceiling, and I said, and Ram Dass came in, and I said to Ram Dass, you know, you can be here now, but if I'm cooking for 200 people, I've got to know in advance to get a picnic ready, you know. So Lynn just grabbed my hand and circled up with the helpers and said a prayer and called me down. Ram Dass and everyone pitched in and we're cutting fruit and we got it all together.
My funny story, I guess, would be my connection with Sun Sanim, who's a Korean Zen master who's now dead. He died of sugar diabetes. He was diabetic. But I met him, his people I met on Vashon Island before we came here, and then through me I invited him here to do a retreat, so he did a Zen retreat here. And then I got involved with his community in Rhode Island because I was a wood carver, and he brought a carver from Korea, a living national monument. And so then I carted a whole bunch of carvings from Rhode Island to Los Angeles for a temple we were going to build there. And Sun Sanim came to visit. I didn't know he was coming. And he got off the plane, and I was there with a group to greet him. And he walked down the line, and he looked at me and he said, "What the hell are you doing here?"
And he's the only one that spoke English.
That's it. Because I'm confused.
My name is Lori Anderson, and I came to Lama just for a few days. I wouldn't say I lived here. So, and you know, I thought that it was in the 70s. And Mirabai Starr, who recently got in touch with me to invite me to this event, said she thought it was in the 80s. And then I ran into somebody today who said, "We came to your teaching." And I said, "When?" And they said, 93. All of us were wrong. Somebody who had some sort of records that weren't, well, I guess they were mental records because the real ones were destroyed in the fire, I guess in 97. So I was here in July of 1990. My work is the shape of stories. That's what my work is. Why do we have stories? What are they? Why do we tell them? For someone who has no memory, that's a pretty weird occupation. But you know, it's the subject of much of my work. So I would say that I don't see my life as a gradual. I don't see it as an arc. I don't see it as a journey. I don't see it as things that I am improving on or want to achieve. I see it more and more as only this moment, and now this moment, and now this one. So I'm not an historian, and I'm not an expert on going back and listening to myself or predicting anything into the future. I really try more and more to be in the present, or I guess that's in a way the official slogan of Lama, "Be Here Now," is a very difficult thing to do, you know, without reminiscing or predicting, you know. So it's a great skill to have, and I think very few people really do have it. I know that I don't really, but I aspire to that. I just said I didn't aspire to anything or try to do something, but I guess I was exaggerating.
What do you see as Lama's most vital contribution to the world?
Oh, I think it's communities like this have become fewer and fewer, and I used to be part of a commune in the 70s based on music and radio and film and sound, and we went through all of the phases of communes. Started out with flying our guru in every week, and then it was producing radio shows, and then it was organic farming, and then by the time it got to the children, that was the time the commune began to fracture, and we all went our ways. But I valued it very much. I really liked the idea of working in a group that had a common purpose. People are very much more on their own now, in many ways, and not so much in touch with others. So I think the Lama Foundation, as I think it has a future. I mean, I think I see. I mean, of course, this is a reunion, so it's a lot of older people, and but there are some younger people as well, and I hope it has a future, because I think spiritual effort as a group is a wonderful thing. My own tradition is different from Lama now. It's my student. I'm a student of Mingyur Rinpoche, and so it's a very different way of approaching things. I'm sure to the same end, to appreciate the vastness of what we have and the emptiness that is this. So I'm much more interested in, or my practice is more of meditation than chanting. But it's fun to hear the chanting, and I like it. I don't do it myself, but it's nice, and I'm sure that it's a gateway to people to a very, very similar place. So I'm not, it's every man for himself, and I think we do all have to choose our own paths, and so that's why a community like this is great, because it gives you a little bit of a push to do that, because it is essentially you're completely alone.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
Well, I spent a while coming up with words to live by with my late husband. We came up with some, and life goes by so fast that sometimes you don't know what to do. So we came up with 3 rules, and they are: number 1, don't be afraid of anyone. Can you imagine what your life would be like if you weren't afraid of anyone? Number 2, get a really good bullshit detector and learn how to use it. Learning how to use the bullshit detector is a very important part of it. Number 3, be really tender. With those, you're set.
I'm Sadiq. My legal name is Hans van Briesen, and I was at Lama. I first visited Lama in 1968 for 3 days, 67 for 3 days, 68 for 3 weeks. In 69 I came to live and stayed 3 years, and when my marriage broke up I went to San Francisco for 3 years, and then I came back and was here for 4 years as both treasurer and coordinator, and left in 77 with my wife Sakina and our child Adrian.
In the arc of your life, what did Lama mean to you?
Well, I was trying to be a physicist, and if I had stayed if I hadn't come to Lama, I would probably still be trying to be an unsuccessful physicist and probably unhappy. I wasn't all that happy in the field. I was also deeply pessimistic about the world and about life in general. Although I was privileged and I had no real reason to be unhappy, I was. I mean, I think that's the Buddhist teaching of dukkha, or suffering. It seems to be intrinsic to human existence.
So I was unhappy, and I think at Lama, because of the spiritual orientation, we were in a situation that we believed in, practicality and spirituality combined, that it sort of gave me hope, not just for my own life, but for life, human life in general. I mean, it seems like it's at risk, but there's hope in, at least while we're still here, there's a lot of hope because of what Lama represents. So I can't really predict the future.
How might your life have been different if you hadn't found Lama?
Oh, I think I mentioned that. I would be trying to be a teacher or a research scientist or both, and probably not very happy in it. I don't think I would have found what I would have needed to teach effectively. I don't think I would have found the depth in my own being that would enable me to do it in a way that wasn't superficial. I think I would just be getting by. I think my life would be just a process of getting by and no more. And I'm not sure I would even have lived as long as I've lived, because that kind of pessimism and depression, not clinical, but subclinical depression, probably would have shortened my life. Yeah.
What do you see as Lama's most vital contribution to the world?
That's a big one. I think first of community, that we are social beings and we need others. As one who thinks he wants to be alone, I've come to realize that we are intensely social creatures, and that to be, say, an outlaw, for instance, would be one of the worst fates, to be condemned to be alone without human interaction. It's solitary confinement. It might be a big solitary confinement, but it's still regarded as torture by people who understand it. So the example of what's possible in terms of community, I think, is big. And the other is that the thing that sustains this community is spiritual work, inner work on the psyche, not just externals. I mean, permaculture is wonderful, and I think to the degree that it connects us with the spirit of the earth, it's very important. But it's just a technology. It doesn't mean much. It's only the spirit of the earth that needs the nourishment. So to the degree that Lama can manifest permaculture, I think it's a great teaching. And when I realized that permaculture means permanent, I thought, this is very radical. To set something up in relationship to the earth that is sustainable indefinitely is a very radical concept for us humans. We're so used to everything being transitory, we throw so much away, and we kind of expect maybe things to be trashed and, oh, well, we'll fix it later if we trash it. So I think Lama is a light of some sort, that there's some kind of an example that it presents to those who've been here. And I think that the Lama graduates have a lot to offer to the world. They've learned something about, we hope, that they've learned something about themselves, about their relationships to others, about their neuroses, about the possibility of a practice which makes their life more worthwhile, for one thing, and more contributive to the human condition. All of those things.
What do you envision happening for Lama in the next 50 years?
Wow. If we survive the next 50 years, and I think that's very questionable, I mean, seriously. I think it continues as an example of what's possible in community in a world where the leadership seems to be focused on selfishness, on greed, on self-indulgence, and on power. Lama has its power trips and its neuroses, and I'm hoping that they can become more to the surface, more conscious. But ultimately, it's much deeper than that. I think we all know better, and the power trips that come up at Lama, I think, are because they're unconscious. People are not aware of what their reaction is based on. So I think, it's hard for me to see Lama its mission is being much different from what it is now. I think I guess I'm partly because I'm conservative, I'm thinking continue to do what it's doing. I think it's doing wonderfully, and I can't really ask for more.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
That's also a hard one because it's so implicit in being here. One is spiritual discipline. Somebody just said they had a really far-out experience up at the Maqbara, and they found it hard to stand and hard to walk. And the discipline is really important. Herman Rednick, whom I consider Lama's godfather, said many times, the essence of spirituality is practicality at all levels. And when I first heard it, I thought, well, practicality on the spiritual level, okay, but he really meant all levels. And I thought, oh, that's what we're trying to do here. That the spiritual and the practical don't have to be separate. You know, that we're being forced to deal with both here. And that integration is extremely important for the world. And it's not enough to have sustainable technology without something to nourish the soul. Without that nourishment, it's all meaningless. I mean, Camus was an existentialist, but he was a moral person. He worked for the resistance in France. So he claims not to have a religious or a spiritual basis for his morality, but it infuses, if you read The Plague and you read other things, there's these ironies, but it comes from a deeply moral position. And so to deny that to humans, either through rational materialism or the obsession with power, it's just not enough to make a life worth living. My heart is so full from this week that I'm surprised I could speak at all. So.
My name is Fatima Pamela Rigsby, and my actual living time here was 1998 through 2001. I've been involved with the foundation since 1971.
In the arc of your life, what did Lama mean to you?
In many ways, I feel like Lama was it was a doorway into spiritual life for me. My first real experience of it.
How might your life have been different if you hadn't have found Lama?
That's really hard to speculate what might have been. I don't know if I can really go to that place of speculating. Anything could have happened. But Lama is what happened, and it's been a major influence in my life.
What do you see as Lama's most vital contribution to the world?
I think that Lama in its structures is an extraordinary school of leadership. That people come here clueless about many things and have to be in charge of them in their cluelessness. And it inculcates this leadership ability that people then take out into the world. And there's not many places that will give complete rookies leadership roles. So I think it's an extraordinary thing that it does, amongst the many other things. But that's one of the most important, I think, is the leadership. Just giving people leadership that have no clue.
What do you envision happening for Lama in the next 50 years?
Well, I think that largely depends on who comes here, because what I find with Lama is if one person leaves, the whole milieu, everything that's going on here changes. If one new person comes up the mountain, it's completely new and different. And each resident circle creates the Lama that is. And I certainly have hopes for what it might be, you know, that it continues to be a light in the world and continues to be the leadership school that it is, continues to embrace permaculture and sustainability and those things, and continues to spread that idea of the awakening of consciousness in the world. And whatever form that manifests in, as I said, is going to depend on who comes up the mountain and who is part of it, because each circle creates what it is that happens here and the direction that everything moves in. And it's great that there's not a resident teacher because of that.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
Well, I think it's important that when people come here, everybody's got concepts and ideas and agendas, and this is, I'm coming here because this is what I want, and all of that, that there is also an openness to what is. Because at least in my experience, and I've seen it with many people who have come here, that they may come here with an idea of what they want, and yet what they really get out of the experience is something entirely different. And it's not necessarily what they thought they wanted. It's not even necessarily wonderful, but in the whole trajectory of their lives, it's very important and it's something that they really needed. And I think that it's important to remain open to the possibilities of what one comes here for, rather than saying, I'm coming here because I want this thing. Yeah. This is a totally personal anecdote for me, and it's from the early years of when I was coming here, and Haridas Baba was here. And at the time I was taking a class in town on Silva mind control. It was the big deal at the time, and I was very into it. So I asked Haridas what he thought of Silva mind control. And he brings out his little chalkboard and he writes on it, "Small mind needs little control." And for me, that has been like a koan my whole life. And it has guided my life in a major way to not kind of overthink things and use the mind so much. Not to shut the mind off, but to not be guided by it. At least that's as much as I understand of the koan now, because it's a continuing koan for me, and that's what makes it so valuable. And many things that I've chosen to do in my life have been chosen based on that particular koan.
Andrea Levine, I've never lived at Lama. I'd worked with Death and Dying back east, and when I moved to New Mexico, I was in a small dying group, and a friend said, "You have to go to Lama. You've got to meet my close friend, Stephen Levine." And so I worked with the dying, so I thought that would be interesting. I was a little arrogant in those days. I thought, I know everything, which of course I didn't. And so I came to Lama, to a Stephen Levine workshop. He had just been working with the dying for 2 years with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross as a meditation teacher. And so I came up here, I had cancer, and I thought, okay, I'll explore my death. And I'd been working with the dying since I was 15. So I came up here, I was 30, I met him, and we'd been together since the moment we met. We came back and we were married here. We came back and we taught here, I think, just one time with Ram Dass. I can't really remember, could have been twice. And then we went out in the world and worked with the dying. And until Stephen died a year ago last January, you know, that has been our life. His writing and poetry and our work with the dying. We raise kids, you know, but our children are, you know, very grown up. They're all in their late 40s. And that was our life. So we stopped actually working in 2000. He always kept writing poetry, but we stopped going out and traveling and being in the world because of that, and I had cancer, and we just wanted to enjoy whatever life we had.
In the arc of your life, what did Lama mean to you?
Lama I met my beloved here, but I also, the space, it's such a healing, nurturing space, and I loved it, and I still can feel that energy, the energy of all the people that came before us, just all the good hearts. So it feels like a very healing space to me. This is the first time I've been here since like 1980. Yeah, well, we've lived as hermits. We were really hermits. People thought we were just saying we didn't want to hang out with them. We saw Ram Dass once a year, and we saw one other friend once a year, and that's how we lived our lives. Now, we were out teaching for many years, but the last, basically, well, he died in 2016. We had stopped teaching. We did interviews. We have a website, so we put a lot of teachings. We did these, what we call couch talks. So we sat on the couch and answered questions that we would write, basically trying to just give out the information that we thought would be most skillful and helpful. And so we did that for about 3 years and then closed this. The site actually is still going, it's free, anybody can get the information. And his meditations are there and such, anyone can download them. And that's, you know, I don't know about giving a plug, but that's levinetalks.com or levinetalks.com.
How might your life have been different if you hadn't found Lama?
Well, I don't know if I would have found my beloved. And my beloved, we built a world together. You know, I was a single parent, he was a single parent. I had one child, he had two. So getting together, you know, we worked on healing ourselves, healing our children as best we could, and working with the dying. So two ghouls got together, and we were perfect for each other, but obviously not perfect people. So just so blessed. And then I've been a caretaker alone for the last 10 years, and he died, you know, a year ago last January. He was 78 and a half, he had brain disease, and he had a really hard time. He had years of pain and suffering, but he had a strong practice. He had a real heart practice. So he wasn't suffering in any, his heart was fine, but suffering in the sense of a lot of pain. It was very tough for him. And you know him, he was a brilliant, brilliant man. But he was, you know, writing poetry till the end. On my 70th birthday, he left me a poem, and then he was dead the next month. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the first time I've actually been out around people in a year and a half. Yeah, no, I've stayed. I'm just going to keep practicing at this point until I die. You know, if it changes tomorrow, fine. I don't know tomorrow. But in this moment, I'm just going to stay alone on my mountain. You know, I might like republish some of his books. I'm trying to gather all his animal stories for a book, so I might go out then do, but I'm not a lecturer. You know, he was brilliant. He could talk for days and never say the same thing twice. He was a brilliant, brilliant teacher. And he was clear, and he could teach, and he could say the same thing in 20 different ways till you got it, unless you just weren't meant to get it. He was unique, and he's with me. He's just now in my cells and in my heart, and I talk to him every day.
What do you see as Lama's most vital contribution to the world?
Well, I think it's that nurturing quality, that place that you can come here and get away and replenish and really go inward and find out who you are in a very quiet, special way. I think this is a unique place. And just the energy of all the teachers and all the wonderful beings that have lived here, they leave their energy behind. You know, people used to talk about, I don't know if people do anymore, morphic resonance, where somebody's energy is left behind and it's palpable. So the energy of all those loving beings that were all just trying to find their path. All of us were. We're all just brailing our way through.
What do you envision happening for Lama in the next 50 years?
I don't know. I would hope it would stay the same in the sense that people can come and work on themselves and discover who they are while serving other people that come here. But I don't know. The world is really sped up. Things are changing very fast. I don't know if it'll be like this in 50 years. The fires changed this. This isn't like I saw it back in 1980, but it feels great. So I don't know. I've not really given it a lot of thought, but hopefully a nurturing place where you can go and heal.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
Well, I think the same thing, that healing is our birthright, grace is our birthright, and coming to a place like this where you can go in and really investigate, because you're the path, and as many great teachers as there in the world, as many great books, those are all fine, but you have to follow your own heart and your own path, or you'll never be free. So I think follow those great teachers, but eventually follow your own path. Heart practice, forgiveness practice will keep you in, you'll be just fine, and you'll be safe, and you'll have a decent death. And when I say decent, I mean you could have a loving death. It doesn't mean it won't be painful or difficult at times, but a loving, forgiving heart has room for the whole world. You know, I am that I am. You know, so that's our birthright. Grace is our birthright. And what else is there to do? I think this is just a wonderful, nurturing place. The energy here is palpable. But no, just people, if I could say anything, learn to treasure yourself, as I've learned to treasure myself, and you will be just fine. Death is safe, absolutely safe. And I believe in not all birth is easy, and we have difficult times, but I don't believe in punishment. I believe it's a merciful universe. So we are all entitled to that mercy, but we have to give it to ourselves first. And that's tough. What else is there to do?
Hi, I'm Sarah Morgan, and my years of full-time living at Lama were between 1977 and 1983. I also first came to Lama in the wintertime of 1969, at which time Lama was like a monastery. And my friend Peter and I didn't know that no visitors could be here. And it was so prayerful and quiet, and so gently did they escort us back down the mountain in the snow, and we slept in our Volkswagen van. But I always remember that time when the Hindu influence was really strong here. I remember in this old kitchen, which was then not the old kitchen, it was the kitchen, and it was where there was a heat source, which is important for the integratedness of Lama, which has to do with living on Earth in a way that's aware of the fact that we're in total interaction. All of our resources, all of the community of what makes things grow here is one of the billions of lessons that I learned when I was here to stay, beginning at that later date. The influence on my life of those years at Lama, I could never express enough gratitude for, nor could I overstate the positive changes and widening of consciousness that occurred for me, that widening and deepening, because it's a place where there is full support for spiritual practice. And I already had been blessed to have met an illuminated soul, Murshid Samuel Lewis, and of course he was buried here, and that was a heart connection that utterly changed my life. And then I came here, and it was learning how to walk the talk of what I knew in my mind, but I didn't know how to really love everyone. So you come here, and it's in a very kind of way, it's like you're in a cauldron of a marriage relationship with everyone here, because they're going to keep showing up at your breakfast table and your lunch and your dinner and your meetings, your work, your communication, your prayer, all was done with this resident population of people in the winter months. And you had to learn how to relate in a very aware and loving way with each one of them, and you begin to see what's going on inside. Whenever there was a judgment in me about something someone else said at a meeting, I slowly began to know it wasn't about them, it was about me. Where was I holding on? Where could I not open my heart to love the most difficult person for me? Where could I let go of my attachment to what I had done, you know? Those kind of things, the mirror was so hot all the time that it was only because this place is so centered in the heart that it became the most happy time in our life. And my beloved friend, the filmmaker's nodding her head. We were here at the same time, and we know that of which we speak. And the people you knew here become your lifelong, deep family. You know, even though we don't see each other, our work is around the world. Lama is not a place, although it's tried to be at times for a place that people could stay indefinitely and put their roots and so forth. But it seems that truly the definition of it as a school, and as it is in the CO 1323 nonprofit mission statement that we have, it's an educational institution dedicated to the awakening of consciousness of all beings with respect to all of the religious traditions of the world. And later on in Lama's development in the years following the fire, when the earth had been scorched almost to absolutely unrecognizableness, the interest in permaculture and conscious building had hit the U.S. consciousness in the cutting edge of people who were interested in environmental things. So that became integrated into its purpose. And it was timely and right. And then we saw how things change at Lama. The deepest part of my experience is, well, there's so many of them. In the early days, we had many of the really who were to become substantial and great teachers in the West, bringing the teachings from the East to the West. All of Lama's karma has included that. This is what I call positive karma. I mean, Ram Dass, voice and inspiration of Neem Karoli Baba brought those teachings, and then they here at Lama Foundations were turned into a book that has influenced thousands and millions of people around the world. Then we had Vipassana teachers here in the early days, when Bhante Gunathora and Jack Kornfield, the American teachers, would come here, because none of them had their own centers yet. So there was a richness of teachers from all lineages. Brother David Stendelross, an incredible Christian mystic in the lineage of Thomas Merton, who touched our hearts and brought the real way of that path to us. We were very blessed with the quality of teachers. Zalman Schachter, and I became so certain of the unity underlying all spiritual paths because I tasted them deeply, not just a little lick. It was like they all became part of the curriculum of what I was learning. We read from the Bhagavad Gita, and that's how we learned how to serve, and the selflessness and the blessing of serving others and making them more important than ourselves, and the bodhisattvic intent. It all was the core of my life.
Would you care to comment on what you envision happening for Lama in the next 50 years?
Thank you. I think that the world is going to need, and especially young people, because it's a place for young people to come, and that they can come to a place where they have total permission to be themselves, and they might inherit their own community, their own town, and they very quickly move into people in positions of responsibility, and it grows them up, and they do it in this same ocean of devotion that is open to all ways of prayer. But yes, prayer before every meal. Yes, meditations there every morning. So I think, and I have found in young people who've come here, I have known a number of them who have said to me, if I had not found Lama Foundation, I would have killed myself. And they meant it because the world is becoming, our Western world is becoming in some ways so devoid of spirit. So I feel its purpose in that way is as great as it can possibly be, and may it meet the needs of all the people who come here. It heals our heart, it healed the wounds of my childhood, because I was re-family with a family who, they liked me even in my worst moments, and they helped me to step into my best moments.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
I would say that one of the first things comes from a teaching of Hazrat Naya Khan in the Sufi lineage of Murshid Sam, Ewell Lewis, and myself, and many. He speaks of when people begin to walk a step onto a path, that one of the first lessons is unlearning. To be able to come and not, and be able to soften their view of the world outside of Lama, kind of leave it a little bit more at the gate. For instance, it was the second year here that I began to realize, because you do not do much in the way of exchange of money here, and once you're here, you just work for the foundation, and it feeds, and it even clothes you, if you don't mind secondhand clothes given by love. And it feeds you, and it takes care of you. And I realized I'm not thinking about money anymore. That in itself, to just taste that is liberating. And then the next year, I began to think I wasn't thinking in I consciousness, I thought in we consciousness. So that openness to knowing we don't know everything would be probably the first thing on my list. Thank you.